Welcome to episode 2, the pot limit Omaha analysis. I'm Bravo, and we're going to go over a few of the hands I played in the last session. I'm going to call this episode Bravo versus Ubermensch. We'll get to him later. Basic info on the player lineup. There were no skirts on the table. There was about 8 Caucasian males, 1 Asian. And the player to my right was a European German. I'm going to call him Mr. Ubermensch. Now, this is the guy I locked horns with frequently. I started off really good with a really big hand, but every time I was trying to shift gears, get into second and third, Mr. Ubermensch would run me off the side of the road, and I never could catch a rush. So that's basically what happened today. It could have been a good day if it wasn't for the German, but it also made for a fun, action-filled day. So I got lots of hands to show you. So let's get right down to it. This is the very first hand I played. I was in middle position. There was a young, aggressive player opened up early for $15. He could have anything. I just smooth called the $15, and I think we had about 3 or 4 players see the flop, and the flop came king, king, ace, and luckily I didn't jump out of my seat. Of course, I'm going to check, and believe it or not, it was checked on the flop. It was checked on the turn, and the young, aggressive player, I didn't know it, but he flopped aces full of kings. He had 2 aces in his hand. So on the river, he finally made his move on the river. I think he bet maybe $50 or $60, maybe a little less. I made it 150, and then we both had about the same amount of money. I had about 200. He had a little over 200. So it all got in on the river, and that was my very first hand, cracking aces with 4 kings. Now to the second hand. There was a early position raiser. He opened up for about 15. I smooth called with this hand, and we saw the flop heads up. The flop, I hit the top set of jacks. The early position raiser, he put his standard $20 post-flop bet in just to see where I was at. Once I called, he probably knew he was in trouble. On the turn, he checked. I motioned, I grabbed a bunch of chips, and he folded before I could even run the chips down. So I take this pot down, flopped a set of jacks, and he gave up on a turn. The opponent gave up on a turn. Now the third hand. Now this is where it started getting interesting because I was right to the left of Mr. Ubermensch, and he liked to come in when he was in late position. He'd like to come in with a little raise and, manhandle and bully the table. And since I was running well, I was going to be calling him even with hands like this. And so the first hand, I mixed it up with Mr. Ubermensch. I had this hand, and the flop came 8 blank blank. I forget exactly what the 2 cards were, but all I have was a 8. And I believe Mr. Ubermensch put a small bet in. So I went ahead and called the small bet. The turn came an 8, another 8. So I had 3 8s. I was not yet filled up, but I put a little $50 bet in, and Mr. Ubermensch folded. I took that hand down. So it was looking pretty good. First 3 hands, boom. Everything was going easy. And I thought it was going to be one of those days, one of those good days. But Mr. Ubermensch was not going to have it. No, he was not going to roll over and start giving me all the hands, as we will see later. So here we go. This might be the most interesting hand of the night, even though I lost it. I look down, I see this hand, not a great hand, but not a bad hand, and I'm running good. And Mr. Ubermensch puts a raise in. He's in late position. And remember, I'm to the left of him, so I'm on the button. So I believe it's an easy call, and we're heads up. I'm heads up, locking horns with the German again. So the flop comes deuce 8-8. And I just can't put him on an 8. I don't know why. I just could not put him on an 8. And I believe he might even checked the flop, but there was 2 spades on the flop, and sure enough, another spade hit the turn. And he put another small bet in on the turn, and I'm thinking even if he has an 8, he may not be filled up yet, and I have the flush. Now, where it really gets interesting is when the board double pairs. Now, with a little bit of experience, you'll know that when the board double pairs, it's going to be harder for him to have a full house. Okay, sure, he could have 4 8s or 4 9s, but again, when the board double pairs, to me, I believe it's going to be harder for him to have the big hand. I mean, it's more likely that he's going to have 3 8s or 3 9s, and my flush is going to beat him. But then it got really interesting because on the river, when the second 9 hit on the river, he put a pretty good sized bet in. He put like $150 bet in, and I did not want to call this. I mean, but this is what makes it interesting. If you run this hand a million times, okay, I got the nut flush, and you run this hand a million times through the computer with random hands, I believe my call was correct. I called on the river. He showed me 4 8s, 4 ochos, yeah. Well, let me discuss this hand a little bit more because there's going to be lots of people out there say I totally misplayed this hand. I mean, the board is paired. You don't call a big bet with a flush. That's possible. There's a good argument for that. But every hand is different. Remember, I'm heads up. I'm heads up with an aggressive guy, and it probably was wrong for me to call the big bet. See, once he made the big bet, which, like $150, he could have easily had like deuce 8 or deuce 9. So, yes, I know it was a bad call. But what made the telling factor to me, the reason why I lost that big bet on the river was the double pair. The double pair on there, I'm thinking it's going to be harder for him to have a full house, and maybe my flush would win. And again, I would like to hear the comments out there from all the Omaha experts. Was it how bad of a call was it? And then, of course, there's no way I could put him on 4 8s or 4 9s. And some people might say, hey, that's just Omaha. You take the bruises. Okay, let's go on to the next hand. So now I think I'll show some of the hands that I did not play. We'll look at some, because a lot of people might come to this channel. Who knows? They may not know Omaha that well, and they're thinking, should I play the hand? Should I not? I don't like this hand because the clubs could get you in trouble. Yeah, I believe you should, if you're going to play a hand, you should have the nut flush going for you. Now, the 7 doesn't really wrap to the king, so I think this is a poor hand. And we'll look at a couple more poor hands, just in case there's some new beginners out there. See, most people think they got 4 cards, you can play anything. But a lot of hands like this can get you trapped. King 9. King 9, you get the idiot end of the straight, and somebody else has Broadway, and on and on and on. Here's another bad hand that I did not play. And look, you see the clubs again. You don't have the nut flush for the clubs. The 3 kind of screws everything up. Now here's one card that could make a difference. If you take that 3 out of there and put a 9 in there, a 9 or a king, now you got a good hand. So it really, one card can destroy the whole hand, in my opinion. Okay, here's another hand that can get you in trouble. I mean, it kind of, to a beginner, it might look good. You got double suited there. You got hearts. You got diamonds. I mean, the hearts are not too bad, but it's mediocre hand. I actually played this hand, but if you not careful, you can get trapped and lose a lot of money on a hand like this. So I was probably able to get rid of it on the flop. I was able to get rid of this hand and not get into any trouble. But just to know, I'm just trying to show some hands that can get you in trouble. Let's go on to the next one. Okay, let's wind this down. I'll show you the last two hands that the German got the best of me. I limped in with this hand here, and the flop was pretty good. It was 6-8. I got open end straight, and there's also two diamonds on there. That's not a big deal with it. You don't really want the diamonds, but uh, the betting was kind of weak, and it went forward, and I never did get there. So this is really not that big of a hand, but I lost it. But the hand that really was annoying. Okay, and I forgot to take a picture of it. And but I had my hand was pocket jacks, queen, king. Pretty good hand there. Okay, pocket jacks, queen, king, and I flopped pretty much like this hand here. I flop an open end straight, and since I got two jacks, I got a blocker. So there's a less chance that anybody else is going to have a jack, and if the big Broadway straight comes, I probably the only one that has it. Again, I didn't take a picture of it. Again, so I got pair of jacks, king queen, flop the open end Broadway straight, and then I turn the diamond backdoor flush draw, and I bet it pretty heavily. And Mr. German, Mr. Ubermensch, actually turned a deuce. He had none of the flop. He had absolutely nothing on the flop. A deuce hit on the turn, which he happened to have a deuce. And the river, I believe, was a 4. And he beats me with deuce 4. And I said, okay, nice playing with you guys. I'm going to call it a day. See you on the next session of Pot Limit Omaha.